Hello YouTube, this is Total War Seraphim bringing you Game 2 of the FIB group stage. I'm proud to announce this game is between Prussian Prince playing as Armenia and Granitor playing as Boii. We know we're definitely in for one hell of a game. So let's jump right on into it, huh? So here we're going to take a look at the Prince's army. We have 2 horse archers out here on the right flank. We've got a Persian cavalry, Eastern archers, Persian cavalry, Eastern archers, Persian cavalry, Eastern archers, Persian cavalry, Persian cav, Eastern cataphracts, Eastern archers, Eastern spearmen, 2 Eastern spearmen, and Royal cataphracts for the general. We've got some more Eastern archers, it seems, and 2 horse archers out here on the left flank for Prince. Let's take a look at Granitor playing as the Boii's army. We've got sword followers, Celtic slingers, heavy horse, sword followers, a 3rd heavy horse, Oathsworn, Celtic slingers, sword followers, Celtic slingers, sword followers, Oathsworn, Celtic warriors, Celtic slingers, levy freemen, heavy horse, and another heavy horse on the left flank. I particularly like this game simply because the matchup of this kind of heavy infantry build versus the more dominant cavalry of Armenia, and I believe that both players brought very veteran armies. They know how to use them. They know the strengths and weaknesses of the other side, and so have chosen accordingly. So out here on the right flank of Prince, we can see that the bow horsemen are going to start taking shots at this heavy horse. It's a prime and simple, easy target, but the heavy horse is in cover. This first volley here lands flush in the backside and takes out even 1 heavy horse in the process. The levy freemen move up to cover its retreat. The bow horsemen retreat accordingly. You can see Granitor moving up the Boii army and is creating layers of infantry here with his Oathsworn general out in the middle. On the right flank of Granitor, the horse archers are now moving in position to again take shots at the heavy horse, and Granitor wisely puts them in cover and threatens a potential charge if Prussian Prince gets lax with those horse archers. So now the Eastern archers are moving up for the Prince, looking to create a firing line with no infantry in between them, and I find that very interesting. They're susceptible to a charge, but I presume that's what he's trying to bait Granitor into, perhaps a frontal charge that then could be countercharged and have the heavy horse taken out of the game early, which would allow the Prince to then use his cataphracts to incredible detrimental damage against the infantry of the Boii. The horse archers again being annoying, taking shots where they can. Neither heavy horse seem to be too fatigued by those shots. So now they open up, and again, predictably, there isn't much you're going to do. You're going to have to charge your heavy horse in. And so the heavy horse comes for the charge, and the cataphracts then countercharge the horse, and they just wallop them. That charge took down about 14 of the heavy horse, just the impact alone. So the cataphracts are picking and choosing their targets now, coming out of the woodwork here, and again, they have an attack order on the sword followers, but then get intercepted by the heavy horse. So this heavy horse is going to do better, only losing about 3 men off the charge. The Eastern cataphract makes it into the general, who's going to take substantial HP damage, and the heavy horse seems to be breaking. The other cataphract does collide with the heavy horse and comes off better for it, but now is being targeted by, it seems to be Celtic warriors. The Eastern archers are opening up into this engagement, trying desperately to get rid of the heavy horse. This makes sense, since if you can get rid of any of the cavalry support for the Boii, the infantry will not stand up long to the cataphracts. So again, we see a cataphract charge into sword followers, which just absolutely decimates them. Out here on the left flank, Granitor is closing in, trying to surround and possibly try to flush out any other units that might be in hiding. The Eastern archers open up on the Oathsworn and start taking them out in copious amounts. The heavy horse and the sword followers are able to win this engagement versus the cataphracts, and the bow horsemen are still taking shots at the heavy horse, which is now taking enough damage that it's being readily destroyed. Again, the heavy horse here is being pulled back out of the way of these archers, and the archers are again now refocus their target on the Oathsworn general, who is dropping in droves due to the HP damage already sustained by the cataphracts. Sword followers take another charge, frontal charge, by the Persian cavalry, and again begin to lose in copious amounts. But out here on the left flank, the heavy horse and the sword follower support are able to overcome the cavalry. So now the heavy horse charges into the Eastern archers, and just because they were fleeing, they take a morale penalty, attacked in the rear, and immediately start to waver. The Eastern spears are now thrown into that mix in an attempt to mitigate the heavy horse. Out here we have a large contingent of sword followers and heavy horse trying desperately to take out the horse skirmishers, who are being used primarily as a holding force. What I love about this is that there's so much micro involved. When you look around, it's really hard to follow what's following what, but you certainly know that both players are frantic on both sides, trying to control the movements of each individual troop movement. And I think it shows quite well just the skill and the attention that is needed in order to pull this off. So the heavy horse are pulling through, those were skirmishers pulling through their own men. The heavy horse has won this engagement against the Eastern spears with the help of the sword followers. It won't be long until that other Eastern spearman routs and breaks as well. The infantry of the Boii of Granitor are now moving through the forest steadily, probably trying to flush out any other units, or maybe a cataphract unit that was being saved until late game. The bow horsemen start to beat a slow retreat as these Eastern archers are being pursued. The Royal Cataphract General, again, too, is trying to split them in different directions, maybe pulling the infantry in different directions, but the infantry seems quite intent on forming a line and moving slowly and surely towards the edge of the map. Here we can see that the heavy horse is beginning to rout, probably some combination of exhaustion and damage done to it. The horse archers open up on the general, a wise target, but Granitor is careful to keep the fronts of his units facing the Eastern archers, and now another unit of Eastern archers is being pulled up to get shots in on the general. The horse archers are content to sit out here on the flanks. Again, I'm sure it was micro. Here we have a great general cav charge into sword followers, and that's brutal, even though it was through the shrubs, and the shrubs are going to slow the speed of the cataphract down, and thus there aren't going to be as many collisions. Here the heavy horse gets into the Eastern javelin, and the javelin men can be quite tough, but will eventually succumb. The bow horsemen are now content to take shots at the heavy horse, again trying to mitigate the effect of cavalry for the Boii, since the cavalry of the Boii is probably the only real threat to the force of Armenia, a Prussian prince, in that they can chase down other units that have become fatigued, perhaps the horse archers or the cataphracts. Without them, it is entirely possible that Prussian prince can attempt to force a draw, which I suppose we'll come to here near at the end, not to give too much away. Again, the Eastern archers are being pulled back. I also want to say that both replays I received seem to be a bit corrupted, so if some part of this doesn't seem to make sense, like there's a Persian cav in the background there that's just sitting there, it will sit there the entire game, so I can't be entirely sure that everything you're seeing is exactly what happened, but I think the general gist of this game will become quite apparent. The heavy horse is taking more shots, and again, Granitor wisely leaves it in cover and attempts not to run with it, as that can break the unit simply due to exhaustion. So the bow horse is again getting shots off at the heavy horse, and is now basically trying to corral what is left of the Boii infantry. But the infantry is so numerous at this point that that Armenia, Prussian Prince, really is running out of options fast. Those bow horsemen are going to run out of ammo, and once they do, a frontal charge or even a rear charge with them is not going to be effective. They're only good in that they have ammo left. The Eastern Cataphract again comes into the, I believe, the sword followers, causing quite a bit of HP damage. You can see them slowly getting off the ground. And I love that the Prussian Prince times this so perfectly that his Cataphract is in, does damage, knocks him down, and then pulls out, just perfectly timed. You can see them trying to chase down the Cataphract from behind, and here the lack of heavy horse or any cavalry support. It must be quite frustrating for Granitor in that he has to watch his infantry attempt to catch the horsemen of Armenia, of Prussian Prince, but without that speed, there doesn't seem to be any way. The map is just too large, and the timer is only limited to 40 minutes. So there's a bit of a stalemate here going on. And normally, you know, I really actually respect stalemates. I play a lot of speed chess, and in speed chess, it is admirable if you're losing if you can force a stalemate. And so I understand what both players are doing here, in that it is conceivable, but not necessarily that it follows that the cavalry of Prussian Prince could do enough damage simply by sheer mass to rout a lot of any Boii units that it comes across, any lone Boii units. Here's a perfect example. The general gets a great charge in on the sword followers, and the sword followers immediately start to rout due to local losses. So what that means is that the Boii should probably consolidate its force, and the best instance of where it should consolidate its force is where the cavalry is going to be slowed. And where it's going to be slowed, Prussian Prince's charge is going to be slowed, is in this forest grouping here. So you can see that Granitor is wisely pulling his units back to the cover of the shrubbery, which would mitigate the charge speed of the Cataphract, and so would give him better odds at being able to destroy the unit. Prussian Prince is wisely not taking that engagement, because if he were to take that engagement, his Cataphracts would get bogged down, his horse archers would probably lose many men off the charge, and would probably rout. So both players are a bit stuck at this position, because neither player wants to lose. The mitigating factor in this is the timer, and this is where yours truly, Seraphim's fault really lies. I did not clarify what would happen in this instance where neither player was willing to force a loss on themselves. I myself have never been in this position, but of course I should have seen that this position was entirely possible. And as such, I have to say that this was a tremendously amazing game from the standpoint of the micro alone involved. Both armies were picked to perfection to counter the strength of the other. And in fact, they engaged in such a way that the Armenian targeted the heavy horse initially, so that in late game, there would be no heavy horse or any cavalry support for the Boii. And so if he came to a position where he could not destroy them, he assured that they could not destroy him. A kind of mad situation, a mutually assured destruction, or quite the opposite. So what we have now is a standoff here, in that if the Boii emerges from the forest, it is likely to get charged by the Cataphracts, and if those Cataphracts get enough individual charges, they might be able to do enough damage to tilt the balance bar back in favor, and so possibly win. And so Granitor is not going to take that risk, and Prussian Prince is not going to force the issue. So both players end up in this holding pattern where neither one is willing to take the loss. And again, I'll repeat, it's really my fault for not stating what happens in these instances, because you can't force two players who might lose to have to lose. And so I'm going to stop the game there. I just want to say thank you to both Granitor and Prussian Prince. I received both these replays on the same day, and I was asked by both players to make a ruling and make a decision. And I'll tell you what I told Prussian Prince, because it's the closest to a logical fact-based ruling I could come to, which is this. I treat every unit on the board as if it had a point value. And as such, when the timer runs out, it's not necessarily about the balance bar in terms of numbers so much as it is about who is more likely to win based upon the point value of the units left out there. And the Cataphracts are an incredibly powerful unit, but I felt that the Boii simply had the numbers. And as such, when a stalemate is forced and the timer runs out, I do not like to rule on games, but I understand why one must in this instance. And it turns out that I ruled in favor of Granitor. Prussian Prince graciously accepted the loss, and the tournament continues. But I think the real focus of this match should instead be on the micro involved of both players. The army selection and the use on both sides, the targeting of crucial units for the other side, was wonderful, and it was definitely worth watching about 3 times, as I have now. So I just wanted to thank both Granitor and Prussian Prince for their involvement in this tournament. It means a lot to me, and I really respect it. This is Seraphim signing off. Thank you and be well.